Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Sean Huggins and this is Europe with Hugs. Thank you so much for being here. I am an American looking to learn more about life in Europe through watching silly videos and stuff on the internet with you guys. And today I have a very exciting video planned. Check this out. Oh, the EU doesn't need US trade. Europe can replace US trade. Here's how. Oh damn. So, this is obviously a very current event topic here. We got Trump absolutely obliterating the American reputation live on camera in real time. So the trade relationship between America and the rest of the world, in this case, European Union, is changing rapidly. Very, very rapidly. So let's see. This is from EU Made Simple. Link to the original video down in the description. But let's see, how can Europe replace all of that trade that is coming from the United States? Because it's a lot. The United States and European Union have worked very closely together for quite some time now. And things are a little rocky right now. Let's just put it that way. So let's see what we got here. How can the EU replace the US trade? Let's see.
Do you remember the good old days of transatlantic trade?
I remember.
Well, it's not all over just yet, but maybe it's time to look for some alternative trade partners.
Canada, maybe.
The European Union is the world's trade champion. In 2023 alone, it racked up 7.6 trillion euros in trade.
Dang, 7.6 trillion euros. Okay, that's more than China and the United States. Wow. I was not expecting that. I was not aware of your game, European Union. Dang. All right, let's continue.
Which is 16% of the global trade share.
Holy crap.
More than the US and China. And that's by a very good margin. And for all the criticism the EU gets, trade is something it does really well. That's thanks in part to the single market, probably the EU's biggest achievement after peace, and a growing network of 130 trade deals with countries across the entire world.
Dang.
Unsurprisingly, the EU does most trade with the US and China. But what is surprising is that there's no free trade deal with either, yet. Seeing the US at the top is especially worrying, especially with Trump flipping the tariff switch on and off, hitting European economies very hard. So in this video, we'll look at the EU's trade with the US and how we could diversify or even replace it. And yes, we think it's possible. In 2023, the US was the EU's biggest trading partner, accounting for about 17% of total trade.
Okay.
Goods and services flowed both ways, totaling 1.6 trillion euros. That's billions crossing the Atlantic every day. The EU exported 823 billion euros to the US, while the US sent 774 billion euros back.
Wow.
And just 5 sectors make up half of all the EU-US trade, led by medicines, pharmaceuticals, and of course, cars. And here's the problem. These sectors are already hit hard by tariffs. Trump has slapped on a 10% tariff across the board and a massive 25% on motor vehicles. This is some serious tough love.
Well, at least Tesla doesn't have to worry about those tariffs in Europe because Tesla sales. Tesla tariffs? No problem. Why worry about a 25% tariff when you can just have a 100% decrease in sales?
For Germany, who is the EU's biggest exporter to the US. They are definitely feeling the pain. And it could get even worse. In 3 months, the US might reinstate a 20% tariff on all goods. And the Kiel Institute ran a worst-case scenario. What if the US imposed 25% tariffs across the board and the EU hit back with the same? The result? A 17.5% drop in EU exports to the US. And a 0.5% hit to the EU's GDP.
Damn.
Ouch. Now that's the extreme case, but let's run with it.
I mean, that extreme case, that might not be an extreme case when we look back on this date a couple of months from now, a couple of years from now. This extreme case might be like, oh man, I wish we had that going on right now, you know? Like, you just don't know. You don't know what can happen.
17.5 drop means the EU would
Nothing
need
makes
to replace
sense anymore.
around 144 billion euros in lost exports. And can the EU fill that gap? We think so. And it starts with new trade partners. India really stands out among the many deals in the works, a massive country with huge potential. For example, India currently imposes import tariffs exceeding 100% on cars. That's crazy, right? But under the proposed free trade agreement, these tariffs could gradually be reduced to as low as 10% for European-made vehicles, opening up a significant opportunity for EU car manufacturers. And I'm sure Germany would absolutely love this. And the projections love it too, suggesting that total trade volume could rise to approximately 167 billion euros by 2026. This means India's exports to the EU could rise to 93 billion euros, and EU exports to India to 75 billion euros. And of course, this could help offset part of the 144 billion euro trade loss from the US, bringing that net loss down to around 130 billion euros. As for where things stand today, both the EU and India are aiming to finalize the agreement by the end of this year. And then there's another massive trade deal in the making, Mercosur, a pact between the EU and
what
Brazil,
the frick is Mercosur?
Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Studies estimate this could boost trade flows between the EU and Mercosur by 37%. And this time,
why they gotta be Mercosur? Make it shorter. EU is a great name for a collection of countries. Mercosur? Bro, make it shorter.
It's not just about cars. Pharma would benefit too, with Mercosur's 14% tariffs on medicines set to be phased out completely, giving EU companies better access to over 260 million people. Projections suggest that the total trade volume could rise to around 126 billion euros by 2026. This means Mercosur exports to the EU would jump to around 49 billion euros and EU exports to Mercosur to around 77 billion euros.
Okay.
That would help offset the potential 144 billion euro trade loss from the US even further, bringing the net loss to around 109 billion euros.
Well, that's
now,
it.
we don't have time to dive into every single trade deal, but if we zoom out and just look at the potential boost to EU exports, here's what it could add up to. For Mexico, though, there are no official estimates, so we made a conservative guess, a 20% export boost, or in other words, 10 billion euros. But here's the problem. Even if all of these new trade deals get implemented, and that is a massive if, I'm looking at you, European farmers, they still don't make up for the full 144 billion euro hit that a full-on trade war with the US would cause. In total, we still be looking at a shortfall of around 53 billion euros. Ouch. So how can the EU replace those potential 53 billion euros in lost trade? And some of you are probably shouting,
no idea.
China! And fair enough. EU-China trade hits a massive 739 billion euros in 2023. And strikingly, there's no trade deal yet. And with a Europe-China summit coming up in this July, the relationship could truly deepen. But here's the issue. We risk falling into the same trap as with the US. Too much reliance on one unpredictable partner.
True. That is very true. If you don't diversify, then anything can happen in the future again.
And let's be honest, China's stance on Russia and Taiwan could shake the entire relationship overnight. So
Very true.
no, we really think there's a better option. You see, the EU has an ace up its sleeve. It's called the single market. With more than 450 million citizens and 22 million companies from 27 member states, it is the largest common market in the world. I mean, look at this. Compared to the US, the EU has 110 million more people. But so far, it hasn't really mattered. As what does the US do best? They actually fully leverage their internal market. Smooth, frictionless, high-performing. Now you might say, don't we have the same thing? And here, we would have to disagree with you. No, we don't. Our single market is far from complete, and it's costing us hundreds of billions of euros of lost potential every year. Let us explain what we mean. The single
Oh.
market is based on 4 freedoms: free movement of goods, services, capital, and people. We've more or less nailed goods. They can cross borders with ease. But the rest, honestly, we kind of suck.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Services, capital, people. It's at the very least not frictionless. Like, there's varying degrees of difficulty to accomplish each one of these things depending on certain situations. But it's not so simple as in America, where it's all one giant country, so it's just like goods, services, capital, people. It's just everyone can do whatever, you know? So, yeah, this is a good point.
Take the second freedom, services. A plumber certified in Poland might not be allowed to work in Belgium without getting recertified, even if they've been doing the job for 20 years. On
Yeah.
top of EU rules, every country also has its own rules, standards, and red tape.
Yeah.
In the US, it's different. A plumber from Ohio can work in Florida with minimal recertification and red tape required. It's not perfect either, but it's a way more unified market. Now take the third freedom.
Not perfect, but yeah.
Capital. A startup in Portugal trying to raise investment from Dutch or Austrian investors may struggle because every country has different rules for taxation, bankruptcy, and investor protection. There's simply no unified framework for venture capital, and legal uncertainty makes cross-border funding harder than it should be. This means that promising businesses often scale within one country, not across Europe.
That's probably why there's not as much investing into companies in Europe as there is in America. Angel investing and stuff like that. Interesting.
Now compare that to the United States. A startup in Ohio can raise money from investors in California, Texas, or New York, all under one federal system, with uniform laws, common investor protections, and a single bankruptcy code. It's a huge reason why
True.
American companies grow fast and scale so big. And then there's the fourth freedom, people. In theory, EU citizens can live and work anywhere in the Union. In practice, it's often slow, expensive, and bureaucratic. Qualifications don't always transfer, and national rules still get in the way every single time. Meanwhile, in the US, someone from Illinois can move to Florida, rent an apartment, get a job, sign up for healthcare, and vote in elections, all without dealing with immigration paperwork and minimal qualification checks. Mobility is simply built into the system. And in all honesty, even if we rewind back to goods, we are not 100% harmonized. Member states can still add national rules on top of EU standards. For example, nutritional labels vary. France uses Nutri-Score, while others prefer traffic light systems or their own formats. And let's not get started on language requirements. Sweden, for example...
I mean, yeah, language requirements, that's a very in-your-face challenge when dealing with so many different countries. You know, like, I know a lot of Europeans have adopted English as their second language so that people from France can speak to people from Germany in English to do business, let's say. But even that is still not perfect. It's not easy, and it's not 100% going to happen all the time. So, you know, getting over the language barrier between however many 20-something different countries that are in the European Union, that's tough. That's very tough.
Requires product labels to be in Swedish. In the US, this problem does not exist. It's all the same. In reality, the free movement of people, goods, services, capital, and even data, as promised in the EU treaties, is often more wishful thinking than everyday reality. And that comes at a cost, a massive cost. Estimates show this lack of integration could be costing the EU up to 1.1 trillion euros per year. Yes, you heard that right. 1.1 trillion euros
oh my gosh.
every single year. A 2019 report broke it down. Removing just 50% of barriers to free circulation of services, that's 279 billion euros right there. Clearing the remaining hurdles for goods, 300 billion euros. A fully integrated digital single market, 450 billion euros. And just switching fully to e-procurement could add 50 billion euros more. Now, if we added that 1.1 trillion euros to the mix to help offset trade losses from the US,
holy crap.
Suddenly, that 144 billion euro gap looks tiny now, doesn't it? Now, does this mean we should turn inward and go full out Europe first? No. Not at all. There's huge value in striking trade deals around the world, including with the US if they're open to it. But here's the thing.
I'm open to it.
We need to get our house in order too. And the top priority has to be finishing the single market. Capital Markets Union? Yes. Energy Union? Absolutely. Defense Union? Long overdue. Digital Markets Union? Let's finally complete it. And Services Market Reform? That one alone could transform the entire EU economy. We need to get serious about all of these, and fast, because completing the single market will have a far bigger impact on our GDP, jobs, and everyday life than spending years trying to make a trade deal with someone like Trump, who frankly doesn't seem at all that interested. The EU has 100 million people more than the US. Let's make it count and finally finish our single market.
All right. Wow, that was awesome. A lot of great points here, as always, made by EU Made Simple. Yeah, the best point to me was the fact that there are all of these inefficiencies that naturally come with having all of these different countries with different cultures, different governments, trying to unify within the European Union and not really act as one giant country like America, but kind of do something similar, share people and ideas and goods and services and currency, and like share as much as possible, but still be individual countries and individual people and individual cultures and individual languages and all that stuff. It's not a easy thing to balance. And me, I'm just a stupid, fat, dumb American YouTuber, so I don't got the answers. But of course, in an ideal world, like, yeah, that'd be great. Sign me up for a European Union that's easier to like move around within and get jobs within, and certifications actually like, transfer between countries a lot more easily, a lot less bureaucracy to do what you want within the European Union. Yeah, sure. Sign me up for that. That sounds great. But anyways, I'm curious what you guys have to say about it, since you guys are the actual Europeans after all. What do you think of this whole trade war situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. But that's all the time that I have for today. So thank you guys so much for being here. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.